real time. I am your host, Hunter. This is our very first episode, and this has been quite some time in the making. This will be a short episode because we're just talking about what we are, who we are, and why we're doing this. So this has been about a 15-year-old project in the making. So a long time ago, there was this product developed, this new piece of technology called the iPad. And shortly after the iPad was released, content creators started putting out all kinds of new ways to communicate. And there was an app, and I can't remember the name of the app now, but it allowed you to do something like this, but and create YouTube videos and blogs and vlogs and all kinds of stuff at a consumer level, and put out pretty good quality content. So I saw that medium, and I'm like, I really feel like I want to do something like that for the church, capital C church, or just the body of believers, to connect people who, and at the time my thought was connect people with platforms and people without. And I thought it would be really cool. The kind of big idea was get musicians, artists, guys like Newsboys and Toby Mac and Casting Crowns, have conversations, everyday conversations with those guys, and fruitful discussion, just a space for the average Joes like me to connect with the Christian quote unquote celebrities. And I didn't really have any way to do that other than this app that would facilitate the media side of it. And I called it, at the time I said, okay, I'm going to call this Connecting the Kingdom. And it was a little bit of a pipe dream, a teenager's pipe dream. And it didn't happen. I mean, that's okay. And the app would end up fading into the abyss of the cloud. But then as I would spend the next 15 years meeting people from all different walks of life, specifically as I got into full-time ministry, and started meeting people that had really incredible stories, that their stories just weren't going to get out. But I didn't really care too much about just giving people a platform to have a platform, but I wanted to celebrate God's faithfulness, because I would hear these stories from missionaries and pastors and professors and students and not even people in ministry, engineers and construction workers and teachers, about how God was doing incredible things in their small little pocket of the world. And as I have watched over the last 5 to 10 years, just everybody being inundated with negativity and toxicity, we need more of these celebratory outlets. So a couple of years ago, we started a podcast called Chewing on Theology, where we'd talk about food and some theology. And that really introduced me to the podcast space. And there was some circumstances that led to that one kind of taking a hiatus. And I still had the desire to have a podcast, but I didn't have an idea. I remember praying one day, I said, okay, God, I really want to do this, but I'm not going to do it just to do it. You have to be leading. You have to be giving me, I need a podcast idea. I need something that's not just gonna be a couple episodes and fade into the abyss, but something that's going to last, and something that's going to add value to people's lives, not just take up more of my time. So I was sitting in a small group gathering at our church, and this particular small group had been meeting for several months and doing life together for several months. And this particular night was kind of a let's debrief the last 6 months. And I was just, my function at that gathering was simply to be a fly on the wall and to listen and to observe. And I remember there were a couple of guys who had a moment that was incredibly powerful. And one guy had been in this group for the entire duration. The other guy was new that night too. And the guy that came in that was new had a particular struggle with his father and faith and some of those discussions. And the guy who had been there stepped up and said, "Man, I went through this 6 months ago." And they had just this really powerful moment. And there was a girl who had two ladies who had the same sort of powerful moment. And at the end, they said, the facilitator of the discussion said, "Okay, what happened tonight? What stuck out to you tonight?" And I remember saying, I'm a fly on the wall. I don't know what's happened in this group for the last several months, but what I got to see, what stuck out to me, and what we all witnessed tonight was God's faithfulness in real time. And then the night ended, the moments ended, we all went our separate ways. A week or so later, I was thinking about this podcast, and I'm like, man, I want to have a podcast, and I want it to be something that brings value and maybe celebrates people's stories. I was folding laundry, and I'm like, okay, God, if you want to do this, you got to give me a name. Like, I'm not taking another step towards a podcast until I have a name for this podcast. And I was sitting there folding laundry, and that story, that moment that I witnessed, those moments that I witnessed God's faithfulness in real time popped up. And that phrase, faithfulness in real time, just was nagging, and it wouldn't go away. And I'm like, okay, God, is that what you want me to work with? So then I workshopped some different Hebrew words, some different logos, some different, all kinds of different, the branding piece that I thought I needed to take next steps and come up with in real time. So I loved the idea of being able to celebrate God's real-time faithfulness in the lives of his people with all the people that I've met over the years. But if you're not in full-time ministry, it's really hard to understand ministry life. So I said, if I want to do this, I want to be able to have ministry people on so everyone can kind of get a glimpse into that world. But I don't just want this to be a podcast for pastors or a podcast for ministry workers. I want this to be something that everybody can grow from and learn from and be a part of. So I want it to be a space for teachers and engineers and retired folks, old people, young people, students, etc. So here we are. What I love about it is that this has been a community effort from the start. From talking with family members about it to ministry workers, pastoral staff, to even the logo development through my social media communities. A lot of the purpose and heartbeat of In Real Time was developed with my inner circle. So the logo, for example, you want to talk about community development. I had a logo put up, and I said, hey, there are like 6 or 7 options. Pick your favorite. And I put it up there, and it was just cool to see how it worked, from people giving me input, like not just, oh, I like this one, but like genuine, well, this would be great if you just did this. And to a friend of mine who's a graphic designer, who put some final touches on it to just make it perfect. But In Real Time is going to be an opportunity for me and my company to discuss God's faithfulness, trust, and reliability as we've seen it and are seeing it in real time. There's a little Easter egg in the logo. on the time. See, the time on the logo shows 10:23-ish, of course. And our desire, the desire for In Real Time, is to share stories that will encourage folks to hold fast to our hope that we have in Christ. And so the Easter egg with 10:23 is Hebrews 10:23 reads, "Let us hold tightly without wavering to the hope we affirm, for God can be trusted to keep his promise." So In Real Time, in its own meta kind of way, has been so far a showing of God's faithfulness in real time. And I'm really excited to dive into this. We have some really cool guests coming up, and starting with a good youth pastor friend of mine next week, Josh. And so stay tuned. Give us some feedback, give us some input, and join us as we celebrate God's faithfulness in real time.